What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Off Script. Tony, Matt, and Mystal talking about whatever. What do we got today, Matt? What's on our...
Today's episode, we're going to talk about community beyond law enforcement. Then we're going to go into our nonprofit, Four Pillars, and we're going to end it with a funny note. So hopefully you stick around and hear the whole thing.
Awesome. So we're clear, that it is an outline, not a script. So,
Yeah.
okay. What is community?
Community safety outside of law enforcement or beyond law enforcement. So we were trying to come up with something that we want to talk to you about to tie into Four Pillars and kind of introduce you to our nonprofit. So the big push for us, at least, was one, it's something we're passionate about, and two, like educating the public. I think a lot of times stuff that we think are that's simple or everyone should know, you realize that people actually don't know this stuff, right? And some of it's the most frustrating things for cops. I know every agency is different, every jurisdiction is different, but one of the main things that was always frustrating for me was people would put themselves at risk just to try to preserve what they deem to be, a scene or evidence, right? So, for example, you get in a collision and you're blocking the interstate, and the amount of people who would just want to sit there and risk getting hit again or get out of their car and be looking at the damage on their car in the middle of the road just would blow my mind, right? So we kind of want to go over some basic stuff like that and how that ties into the nonprofit, really. What do you say?
Yeah, I think that's a good start. You brought up getting in a collision on the interstate. Think about how fast you're going on that interstate. Depending on where you're at, you can be going 70, 75, 80, whatever that speed limit is on that interstate. You get in let's talk about a simple fender bender, not serious injuries, and you're sitting on a 3-lane interstate in the middle, just out there wondering what to do. You got cars going 80 miles an hour. Well, now you're taking a simple collision that's non-injury to, you could potentially die or kill anyone in your car or the car in front of you because you're not doing the simple things like just let's get out of the roadway and let's assess the situation at that point.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get caught up in trying to preserve their innocence. Say, there's a crash, they want to be able to prove that it wasn't their fault. So they're trying to preserve the scene when they should really be more concerned with their life. Just move the car, get away from the road. Collision experts, we can understand what happened. Markings on the road, debris, it doesn't take...
And trust me, we've worked a lot of crashes.
Right.
And we've most likely seen the exact same crash at that same exact spot.
Right.
Hundreds of times. So when we, ask you to get out of the road, or when a dispatcher asks you to clear the roadway, I know they've had several times people would get pretty rough with them on the phone. And one, I don't tolerate people being, hateful to the people behind the calls, coming in and everything. They have a stressful job to do anyway. But I also understand that we work this every single day or multiple times, in our career, and it's something that maybe happens to a civilian maybe once in their life or just a couple times in their life. So I also do try to be mindful of that as well. Like, we see it every day. Those of you who aren't in law enforcement might not see it every day. It might have never happened to you before. So we also understand that it is stressful and scary and all those things. So I do try to be mindful of that and be patient. But at the end of the day, these are things that I don't think people not in law enforcement really get to talk about, like why a cop might want you to move your car, or why they're asking you to do what they're asking you to do, or just simple measures you can take on your own to make your community safer, make yourself safer and your community safer. Soon we'll be pushing out a class on situational awareness, and I've been asked to teach that class several times by women's groups, and it's just basic, observation techniques and why we are the way we are, and how to identify if someone's trying to take advantage of you, or whatever, plethora of reasons. Take the class if you want to know more about it. I'm not going to teach the whole thing here. But the main thing behind Four Pillars was, how do we take what we learn every day and or what we've developed and trained and how do we pass that on to people that it could potentially save their life or change their life for the better, right? How do we relate that information to normal everyday people? And so that's what Four Pillars is about. Yeah, we have some stuff for law enforcement, but mostly our target is how do we improve the lives of everyday people we come in contact with that don't necessarily understand how things work or how to how to inoculate themselves to stress.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you that are in law enforcement and are listening to this, think about how many times you get asked at your house or family gatherings, parties, whatever, what would you do in this situation? What should I have done? Just those basic things like, well, yeah, you should have just got out of the road and called the police and figured it out from there. You didn't have to sit in the middle of the road and discuss it.
Well, I was even going to talk about people think it won't ever happen to them, right? And I actually had one of those moments with my kid and my mom,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Like nothing ever happens to me when I'm off duty because like I obviously don't look like someone that you want to talk to anyway. But but it actually like happened to my family. It was crazy. And I'm always like, I never have had a Dateline moment. Well, I was there for my mom's Dateline moment. And my kid, we got done eating and my kid was going to go home with my mom and dad and she has really tinted windows and we had buckled him in and then she was getting in to shut the driver's side door and two females, like I guess didn't realize that we had been together. We're pulling off and two females come in and halfway pull into the parking spot next to her and they hop out. Thankfully, we hadn't left and obviously I'm identifying all these indicators of the area, how they're behaving, how they're driving, how they're getting out of the vehicle. Anyway, so I pop out immediately and they go over to one of them went to my mom's driver's side door and was beating on the door trying to get in the car and asked like I confronted her obviously and she said she knew my mom. She said it was her friend. I was like, no, it's not your friend. Like get away from the car. And she kept beating on it trying to get in the car and so I finally just said like if you don't get away from the vehicle, like I'll put hands on you, right? And so she backed up and this is a lesson for my mom too. She backed up, she let go of the car, and I told my mom to drive. Well, the other lady who had been standing out in front of the pickup, and I was like, drive. And she just like, I was like yelling at her through the window, and she just stayed there. And I was like, put it in drive and drive. She will move, right? And so she did. She put it in drive, and sure enough, the lady moved, and they were able to get out of there, and we got all the info and stuff. But just a simple thing as if someone is trying to rip you out of your vehicle, you have children in that car, at very bare minimum it was attempted carjacking with all the details. I'm not going to give everything here, but drive. Something so simple as that.
Well, sometimes simple isn't so simple, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
freezing is a natural thing for some people. Some people are, you know,
Yeah, I mean, that
some
fight or
people
flight
are
instinct.
actors. Yeah, some people act, some people freeze. I don't know. You never know what you're going to do until you're in that situation. But
Yeah.
just being prepared for that situation. Like everyone else in that group that you were with didn't know what you were doing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you were already in action before they even realized what was going on. So what's the key to acting or responding so quickly?
I would say, and this is another soapbox of mine, but when you got to speed up your OODA loop, and we'll go over that later, but it's observe, orient, decide, and act. Sorry, that was on the fly, but anyway, so I'm constantly doing that all day, and I actually tell my guys to do this too, and I practice it, not at work, and I would tell Tony all the time, like, practice this on people, like just talking to people, having conversations, and your approach with them. But for me, I'm constantly observing my environment, and thankfully, I'd worked that area quite a bit in my career. I know it's normal. I know it's not normal. I know what it looks like when someone pulls into a parking lot. If they're speeding up and slamming on their brakes and not pulling all the way into a spot, that's a red flag to me. I'm not going to dismiss it, right? And so just little things like that, how they exit the vehicle, how they walk, where they held their hands, how they held their hands, tone, just overall demeanor, right? When you're constantly observing that every day with people who are normal and normal state and people who are agitated or people who have malicious intent, right? You can easily pick up on the indicators, like easy. It's like black and white, right? And when you're able to do that and you condition yourself to do that, then when there's an outlier, it's super easy to identify, right? And so for me, like Jess, she actually got out of the car and she was like, "Wait, they might know your mom," and I'm like, "She doesn't know my mom." And then my dad gets, I'm like, "Dad, do you know her?" And he's like, "No, I have no idea who that is." I was like, "Right," and so it was just funny to see Jess's take, because she's in her mind, she's like trying to justify what she's seeing, right? She's trying to make peace with, oh, there's got to be an explanation, and in human nature, right? We all see different sides of the world and people. And so in her mind, there's got to be a legit reason why someone would be doing this that's not to do someone harm or to steal their stuff, right? For me, though, I don't excuse those behaviors. And I think one of the things, I'll just go in, this is law enforcement too, and stop me if I'm going too far and it's boring, but even with my guys, like when it comes to finding criminals or people involved in criminal activity, they will want to give them excuses, right? And so it's like they like, "Oh no, he said this," or "No, oh no, she said this." Where at the end of the day, like, this is what they're doing, this is what you have, stop overcomplicating it, right? And people do that just to try to keep the harmony in their brain, right? I don't know, but that in that case, it's a great example because you have someone here that is clearly trying to carjack you. My kid's in the car, so no, not happening, right? And then it even the hesitation just to put it in drive. And I'm not saying like you gotta stomp on it and run someone over. I'm just saying put it in drive. They're gonna move. Like, and if they don't move, then let me take care of that part, right? But it's amazing to me. Even law enforcement, like, it's part of who we are. We want to try to justify things, right? Even when there's no justification. And this was told to me a long time ago, and I've passed it on. A lie can never be the truth, right? And I tell my guys that a lie can never be the truth. And it sounds stupid, and it sounds like it doesn't make sense when I say that. But when you're working and someone's telling you a story, or your everyday life, someone's telling you a story, and you're like, "Man, this doesn't make sense." It doesn't make sense because a lie can never be the truth, right?
It's a very good point. So, I mean, maybe you've caught yourself in this situation. Maybe you have a family, friend, son, daughter, whatever, that has gone through something like this. You should definitely take this class. We'll go into a lot more detail about it for you guys. But do you think at that time, do you think they were an easy target?
Yes, 100%. I think the people involved in it, I think they weren't watching for long enough to realize that our car was associated with theirs, like we were there together. I think it was after when we had already gotten into our vehicle and they saw my mom, which I love you, Mom, but she's small and she was getting up into this big pickup, and it had really dark tinted windows, and so they couldn't see that my dad was in it. Actually, it was illegal tint. They don't own that vehicle anymore. Mom and Dad, that was illegal. You lawbreakers. Anyway, so I think that they were just observing and they saw my mom going around to get in that pickup. And honestly, had she not had the feature in her vehicle where when you just put it in drive, all the doors lock. So that's another thing. You don't have to go a certain speed. A lot of vehicles, if as soon as you put it in drive, the doors will lock. If not, then they probably would have had to jump on her because she hadn't gotten up to speed for them to lock at like 20 miles an hour or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, just thinking basic, if you don't have that feature, once you get in the car, especially if you're a child, I mean, why don't you just hit the lock button right then and there? You're locked inside your car. That way, Maddie, you like to put your purse away. You like to do all that stuff before you actually leave that spot. So why why don't we just make sure our car is locked so nobody can come up and
That's
do something like
that's a
that?
great point. Nice little situational awareness.
Yes.
In your situation, had all involved had situational awareness, the attempted idiots there would have realized that
Yeah.
you guys were coming out as a pair. You all were working together, so
Yep.
that led to their failure
Yeah.
on their
It did.
objective.
It did. And I will even go further with that. Like the lady who was standing in front of the pickup, she did move. And she was telling the younger girl trying to get in, like telling her, hey, like this ain't it.
This is
This
a
ain't it,
bust,
right?
right? It's
Like let's
failed.
go. Right?
Yeah.
But I will say this, you have to be willing to offend people for your safety, and you have to be willing to um, be rude if it requires. I found that a lot of, I'll just say women, because I ask by women's groups to come talk a lot. I will say a lot of women struggle with I think it's partly conditioned for some of the older generation, um, and I can get into that later. But um, they're more afraid of offending someone than they are for their life, and that's concerning to me. Like I don't go around being rude to people, but if I have to be assertive and someone thinks that's rude, then that's just fine with me.
Right.
Right.
That could be, the region you're in.
Exactly.
We're in the South here.
In your culture, and like I know growing up, a lot of the older generation women, like you were to be respectful no matter what, and definitely be respectful to men no matter what, and any attention from a man you should be thankful for, you know and that's not to be negative, that was just part of their world, right? And that makes them an easy victim, especially if it's someone who wants to do them harm.
Yeah.
That's been something that they were conditioned to do that wasn't to their benefit. And so just being aware of tactics that are used, and in this case, it wasn't even like men and women both. It doesn't matter. Gender doesn't matter. In this case, it was a pair of two women that tried to carjack my mom. So
Yeah. Awareness starts with identification. Sometimes cops look like superheroes because we can. Sometimes it seems to others that we may be able to predict the future, or we pick up on things really quickly. That's because we're looking for them constantly.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
And people tell you what they're going to do. That's
yeah,
the other thing.
yeah.
If you pay attention, people will tell you what their intentions are. And going back to that being two women, that was definitely done on purpose. They saw my mom, and it was a two women team. It was a two woman team because
Yeah.
that would put another woman at ease, right?
It's less threatening.
Exactly.
Yep.
And anyway, all that to say, gender doesn't matter, and I tell my guys at work that too. Like, sorry, Tony, I'm gonna give them a story about us.
Go for it.
In training, Tony would always be gentler and wanna revert to gentleman Tony when it came to dealing with women, and I just had to come up with this analogy for him, like leave gentleman Tony at home, you are professional Tony at work. Right. And a lot of times he would almost get played. Well, he did get played by
Yeah.
Almost get played by women because he would be softer, because he was raised to be gentleman and take care of women, and those are great things. But when it came to doing his job, like I think that's where the benefit of having a female trainer training you was good, because criminals come in all different packages,
Yeah,
right? It doesn't
absolutely.
matter, right? And so being able to see that, yes, you can be professional with everyone, and you should be, but you don't just not follow all the warning signs because you are too busy trying to conform to what you think a gentleman would do in a situation when that needed to be left at home.
Right.
So anyway, yeah.
Absolutely. So if you didn't learn anything, at least pay attention to, don't make yourself an easy target. Pay attention to your surroundings. Know what's going on. Don't just be tunnel vision about whatever you're doing. Don't just be thinking about, well, look what time it is. I got to get home. Pay attention to that. And be respectful, of course, always, but don't be afraid to be assertive when you need to be. You can be rude,
Yeah.
especially if your life depends on it. That's the most important thing. So take those 3 things, at least if you didn't listen to anything else. With that, let's talk about our shitty day. Let's let's hear your story, Mystal.
Well, this is going to involve one of my guys, and he'll know who he is when he hears this story. Actually, all my guys will know who he is, but I'll leave his name out just in case maybe he'll come on the show one day. We'll have him on the show.
Yeah, maybe we'll get his perspective of what he was thinking or feeling.
So we're out working, and it's a night shift, and he's having a night, man. Like, he had just cleared like a car fire, like crash, and it was a mess, you know. And I'm on this like rolling roadblock deal, and so I hear him like getting hammered, so I just break and I go over to help him, and he's out with a gentleman who has seen better days. Like, he's seen better days, and he had been trying to run into the roadway and all kinds of stuff. So it's already like, you know, trying to keep him out of the road and for his own safety and all that. So my boys got him detained and like trying to ascertain where he needs to go from here and all this. And so he's asking him if he has any weapons on him because he's wearing lots of baggy clothes and acting erratically and all kinds of stuff. And so he's doing his pat down, and he comes across something rather large and lumpy in his leg, in his pants leg. And like, just from observing the situation, I'm like, I got an idea of what that probably is, right? And so I'm like, it's kind of low for it to be like a gun or anything. You know, it's like, when I say it was like down in the leg area, I mean like it was like, you know, coming out that, going south, you know. And so he's just like asking the guy, what is this? What is this? What is this? And the guy's like saying something, and he asked, like, you know, can I check? Well, what is this? And the guy's like, you know, like he when I say he's acting right, like you can understand hardly anything he says, but he's nodding his head. So my boys, you know, groping this object. And then it's like, all of a sudden, he finally realizes what it is. And he's like, ah! And it was a giant turd in this dude's pants. And he didn't have on gloves or anything. Sorry, I'm outing you, boy. You didn't have on any gloves.
Man.
You barehanded that turd. He barehanded it. Anyway, and he's like, oh, no! And when we have him on the show, you'll see, like, his accent got real thick. So it was extra funny. But anyway, no, lessons learned, right?
That's a great lesson. I thought he was grabbing something else. Honestly.
No.
I don't know which would be worse. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, first mistakes, you got to glove up. I mean, come on.
Yeah,
right,
for sure.
Right. No gloves on, and yeah, he massaged it. Sorry about that. He massaged it and learned a lesson that night. I mean, he did a good job. Overall, he handled that call very, very well. It was just, I saved that video. I'll forever have that video of my boy patting down a turd. big turd.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
That's.
What about you, Matt? You got any?
I do
stories
have a
like
nasty story. I didn't fondle any turds.
Turd
I'm a little turd fondler.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe we'll use that somewhere.
Yep.
I was a little more time on than that. New to glove up and not to fondle turds.
Yep.
My story is this actually came in as a call to dispatch. It was transferred from another agency that refused the call because it wasn't a call. And so I get the call over the radio, and they don't give out the full details. All they tell me is that there is a guy at a gas station off the interstate that needs help getting gas and clothes. So in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, what, that is okay. Somebody needs help getting gas. Somebody needs like clothes. Yeah. Like that's weird. And then they tell me to call in for some more details. So I'm just thinking, oh, okay, this is going to go south real quick. Well, I call in to get the details, and the best way to put this is a guy defecated on himself and couldn't get out and get gas and wanted me to go buy him some clothes. Um, I
Hmm.
was, I was, I was like, okay, well, I'm intrigued now. Let's go see what this is about, right?
Right.
So I get there. It's a normal day, normal guy. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just legitimately couldn't make it off the interstate in time. Defecated on himself. What makes it weird is that I would have helped him get gas, but he was adamant that I had to go buy him clothes because he defecated on himself. I mean, I'm like, I'm not gonna buy you clothes because you defecated yourself. Like that's a you problem. Let's fix this, right? So I'm like, okay, well, how about you just use your phone? You got a phone, right? And he's just like, yeah, I got a phone. Like, okay, well, I can help you get some gas so you can at least get to where you need to go. And I'm like, well, how about you pull out your phone? You use the internet on your phone. You have internet, yeah? Okay. Well, let's order you something from a store and have them bring it out to your car. How about that?
Yeah, that's
And to him, that was apparently the first time he's ever heard of ordering something off his phone and bringing it out to him.
wow.
So it's, yeah.
I mean, you could also stop. Like, stop if you think you're going to poop yourself.
Like,
Stop
you
and
can just go on the side of the road.
right,
I mean,
like,
do what you got to do.
like,
You don't
try
have
to
to
find a
poop
wood
yourself.
line or something and like go and like. I guess to me, there's so many ways to like troubleshoot that problem. You know?
There's so many ways to go about it, but why would you call in
Wow.
to a police department and openly admit that? I mean, that's
I mean,
Well, this kind of goes into decision making and
yeah.
it does.
flight or fright. I mean, or what is it? Freeze or flight? I don't know, but
Fight or flight.
Yeah. yeah,
His decision was, let's see if the police can help with poopy pants.
yeah. Problem solving sometimes doesn't
No, no.
start
I
working
know.
until you call an adult. And
So
see
luckily,
if the-
that's really the only turd story that I've had to come across in my career, thankfully.
Oh man.
But what
Yeah.
about you? I'm sure you got something.
Not a feces story, but just humans are interesting creatures. You know.
If by interesting you mean nasty.
Yeah, I mean,
There's some
I don't
gross
know
people.
if it's a choice or not. I don't know. Mental health. Sometimes it's hard to discern between mental health crisis and drugs, or just that's maybe just how they
Basic
want to
hygiene.
be.
Yeah.
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 When I was training a young. He got a call for a homeless guy who was kept laying in the road or something on an off ramp. So we went to help him, and our training program's a little different than some, I think. So later on in the phases, the trainer kind of tries to disappear a little bit, and young officer decided that the best course of action was to remove this guy from this ramp and take him somewhere else. And it's the middle of summer. It's like July or August. And this individual's homeless. He's been soaking in his own juices for a while. So, young officer puts the guy in the car. And at this particular agency, the bad guys, or the guests, as we could say here, ride in the front seat. So me, as a senior guy, I have to ride in the back seat. And it's hot. Young officer has the air on in the front, and it's blowing this smell right into all of this. And the freaking window's locked, and I can't do anything except choke on my own saliva and try not to gag. It was terrible. Terrible.
Yeah.
We actually faked a call to get out of that. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you got to.
My phone just mysteriously rang, and we had urgent business to deal with, so we got this individual out I could breathe.
You're trying to be nice and give the guy a ride somewhere, but I mean, there's only so much stink you can take before you
Yeah.
throw up yourself.
Yeah, and people might think that that's a company vehicle. It's not your car. Don't worry about it. But that's your office. Like you really have to like you live in there. Uh, and some things just don't vacuum out very well. you
Now
know.
then you're rolling with the windows down for the next however many hours to
Yeah,
try.
yeah,
Yeah, we've been there before, that's for sure. And and I'll say too, like, but those, all jokes aside, yeah, like we've all had those calls, and they're never pleasant, but if anything, it's definitely made at least me more aware of our mental health crisis
right.
and drug abuse just in our communities, right? I like how you said you don't know if it was just all mental health or if it was drug abuse, and that has led to some of the deterioration of the mind. But regardless, at the end of the day, that's a part of our community, and you know we have to deal with it in a different way than maybe some of our viewers or listeners do. But it doesn't mean it's any less heartbreaking, right?
Right.
Like uh, taking just like a CID class that we did with the Department of Mental Health. Like there's a lot of good people over there. There's the funding's just not there. You know what I mean? So when it comes to donating to nonprofits, I highly suggest you do that because those are the people that are out there making a difference and trying to um, rehabilitate a lot of our community that's been left by the wayside.
Right.
There are some that it's a choice. It's a choice to live that way, and then there are some that it wasn't necessarily their choice. I've unfortunately, like, you have a job to do, and I've had to arrest plenty of people that their life ended up there or the way it did because of a plethora of reasons, or plethora of things happening to them that wasn't necessarily their fault. But at the end of the day, you have to take ownership of where you're at, right? And as a community, we have to take ownership of where our community, how our community is, and this is definitely an issue.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, the homelessness just in Oklahoma City, is definitely an issue. So, um, anyway, we might deal with it in different ways, but when it comes down to it, it's a community issue, and
Yeah.
I feel like one that's not talked about enough because it's not fun and it's the ugly side of life, right?
Yeah. And that's an interesting concept that I just thought of. Like you don't really see a lot of homeless in small towns.
Yeah.
Right. You have small towns that have very limited resources, but usually those folks tend to try to take care of themselves and each other a little more. You get into the cities, and it's a lot easier to get kind of lost in the sauce. Even though Oklahoma City does have quite a few resources, there's still
They do, but they're overwhelmed by
right.
the
Yeah, there's
homelessness
there's
population there.
so
Yeah.
many. It's just kind of strange how that happens.
We just employ you to look at your area and maybe try to do your part in the world. I mean, I don't know. I definitely have come across some that they choose to live that way, but like I said before, there are several that it wasn't necessarily their choice. They're just doing the best they can, and that comes down to discretion in our line of work. And for me, it's like, well, signing this person up with all these tickets when I know they probably live out of their car, is that going to make a difference? Or, is that going to make a difference? Or what's going to make the most difference here? And, I know that I'm not the only one. I know there are lots of police officers out there that, I've purchased a hotel for families before. I've, you know, they didn't have groceries or they needed something to drink and it's hot, right? I know that's happening every single day. And so, regardless of how you feel about law enforcement, know that there are officers out there using their own money
Yeah.
to provide for people in need. And we aren't doing it for any attaboy or attagirl or anything. Most honestly, I don't think I've ever told anyone I've ever done that. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? Because that's not the reason. But just know that you do have officers out there doing that very thing. And
Yeah, and at the very least, when I'm working, if I come up to a stoplight or something, that they're right there. I mean, I can't offer you a place to sleep or live, but I mean, at the very least, I'll roll down my window and say, hey, you need a drink or food or anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't mind going and buying that for them at all.
Yeah. Or just hand them a bottle of water. Or, I mean, sometimes, like with my smelly guy situation, 10 minutes in the air conditioning in that car could have made a difference.
That or
you know?
like just taking them to a truck stop and paying for a shower or something.
Yeah.
Something like that, you know. But that kind of goes into one last story I am going to tell because it was pretty cool. At least I think it's cool. But when Tony was working, I used to do it alone, you know. But then Tony came out, and on holidays we would go take food to the homeless populations around the metro, and it was fun. Except for they would always run away from us.
Right.
Especially the first year that we did it, we had to be like, we're not
Yeah.
here to like, we just want to give you some food, right? And then it was after that they just like came out of nowhere, like everywhere,
Yeah.
you know. But it was funny, they would like run and hide from us, like, please don't, like, we just want
Yeah.
to give you
Yeah.
something, you know. But all that to say, that's a temporary fix. It's a temporary
Right.
fix. It's for an hour that maybe they have, you know, a cheeseburger or something good to eat for that night. But what is a long-term solution? And that's a question I ask myself, and that's a question you all should be asking yourself. What is a long-term solution to the problems we see within our community? And then whose responsibility is it to fix it? Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of times, a lot of stuff that isn't necessarily in the law enforcement wheelhouse is dumped on law enforcement just to deal with because no one else is coming up with a solution.
Right.
Right? Those of us who care try to train ourselves to be able to handle it in the best way we can. But ultimately, whose problem or who's going to take care of it? And really, the answer is the community as a whole.
Right.
And until that starts happening, I don't think there will be a long-term change. So maybe that's what we leave you with on this one.
Yeah, it's a question to ask yourself. What can you do?
Yeah. If you have any cool suggestions, send them up.
Yeah. And if there's anything Four Pillars can do specifically with those suggestions, we will.
Yeah.
So if you want to donate to the cause and be part of the solution, click the link below.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Always like, comment, share. Let us know what you got.
Cool. See you guys next time.